Hey, what's up, New Zealand and the world? Lucas Lawman's Kiwi Voice. Thanks once again for tuning in as we look to bring you a wrap-up of the last sort of 4, 5, 6 days of what's been going on in Wellington. Thanks to everyone that has taken the time to engage with us. I appreciate all of you true Kiwis. If you're watching this on YouTube, please by all means hit that subscribe button if you have not already yet. Hit that like button, comment down below and we'll get an answer back to you. Same with Facebook. Thanks to everyone that's been sharing the links and showing support. But wow, what have we got to cover off over the last few days in Wellington? In terms of the protest itself, other than getting more organised and expanding at certain periods, there has been a huge amount of dramatic change in there. They are running a well-oiled operation up there, where the majority of news comes from where I sit. The reactions outside it from bureaucrats, politicians, councillors, police, etc. So we're going to look at a few of their comments. We're going to give you a decent look as we go through this yarn of good footage throughout Camp Freedom in Wellington. So let's get into it. So by now, Thursday the 10th of February, that fateful day, is probably a distant memory for a lot of people. We've moved through a lot more changes since then. Politicians' comments over the last couple of days have been interesting ones. Labour Party has not really moved at all. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern continues to just minimise, demonise and label the members of the protest as she has done from the beginning of this, calling it unlawful, focusing on anyone that has actually participated in any kind of intimidating behaviour at all out on the edges and labelling the entire protest as such. Pushed this morning on Monday the 21st of February on the AM show around her senior minister's comments. Now we're talking about Trevor Mallard and Michael Wood have thrown out a couple of disgusting comments over the last couple of weeks. To me, this shows just a complete disdain and lack of empathy, as well as just that whole class issue. There's that classic shot of Trevor Mallard standing up on level 1 Beehive looking down on the protesters, and his comments, along with Transport Minister Woods, went a little something like this. Michael Wood said, "There is a river of filth, a river of violence and menace, a river of anti-Semitism, a river of Islamophobia." Fairly heavy, completely and utterly out of touch words from the Transport Minister Michael Woods. I was pretty disgusted to read that. And of course, Trevor Mallard has stuck to type, as he has done since this occupation protest started. And he called them the biggest collection of ferals that I've seen. As I said, this was pushed on the AM show this morning, and Jacinda Ardern completely talked around the issue, would refuse to condemn those ministers' comments and just pass them off, saying she can't comment on other ministers' comments. So that's a striking admission from me where I sit. Round in the opposition, David Seymour, who I personally have lost a lot of trust in with his flip-flopping on a lot of comments and a lot of rhetoric around the protest and the COVID response in general. But it appears at the moment he has stepped up and is looking to engage with protesters. He was the first and only senior MP to do so. And from where the ACT Party sits, again, from their ethos, they were always the party that should have done this. His statement as of yesterday was a positive one from the side of the protesters and the point that they're trying to get across. So David Seymour says, "The protest is a symbol of frustration that is felt more widely than the people camping on Parliament grounds. It symbolises frustration with a COVID response that has become increasingly costly and out of step with the rest of the world." Strong words also there, and a really sharp shift from where ACT and David Seymour were sitting and speaking only a week or two ago. Wellington City Mayor was interviewed also via Breakfast, I think it was, one of the mainstream channels, and the Wellington City Mayor had this to say. He was fairly neutral, if I was totally honest, and really just looking at the practicalities of what's been going on around there. He said Mayor Andrew Foster needs to be dialogue with these people, and quickly. He's been spending time over the weekend dealing with the 4 Ps, protesters, police, politicians and press. From that, he's decided that there needs to be dialogue, and quickly. He spoke about COVID restrictions outside of the protest, meaning that businesses are still suffering. He is aware of a lot, were his words, a lot of businesses in the Wellington Central area that are 2 to 4 weeks away from closing, regardless of what's going on at the protest, and has called for further government support. So that was interesting to come from Mayor Andrew Foster, Wellington City Mayor. In terms of the protest itself, over the weekend just past, the 19th and 20th of February, the size of the crowd at the protest, or the size of the protest, swelled significantly. The Freedom and Rights Coalition organised what they called Rhythm and Rights Festival over the weekend. So there was a stage installed and several prominent New Zealand artists did actually perform there. Shane Walker, Damn Native, Sweet and ID, DJ Raw and others across the weekend. So there was a party atmosphere, the numbers did swell. No incidents came out of that weekend. It was seen as peaceful, albeit festive. Coming back to Christchurch, in relation to what's going on in Wellington, there was the massive Freedom and Rights Coalition march on Saturday the 19th, where around 6,000 people marched through the centre of Christchurch. We covered that extensively on Kiwi Voice. But what was interesting to see was the Stuff's media coverage of what they called a counter-protest. This is silliness. It literally boiled down to 2 protesters, part of the coalition against the Freedom and Rights Coalition. Yes, it's available, it exists, it's on Facebook. 2 counter-protesters faced up and made their own voices heard on the side of the Bridge of Remembrance as the march went through. What Stuff reported, however, is that they were due to hold a counter-protest at Cramner Square, but they cancelled it due to intimidation and bullying behaviour from the protesters already there at Cramner Square. Now, I don't know how they managed to get to this conclusion. This is a perfect example, in my opinion, of mainstream media outlets like Stuff and News Hub twisting things to suit what they're going for there. There were 2 people. 2 people. How do we know it was even any kind of counter-protest at all? But as you'll see from this footage there, they were intimidating themselves. Whoever they are, the 2 people that stood at the Bridge of Remembrance held the middle finger up and then confronted protesters that were marching peacefully through the Bridge of Remembrance. So it got fairly feral before another couple of protesters wedged their way in there. You can see that on the video there, and diffused things. I was actually interviewing just to the side of these guys when it was occurring, and I can tell you for certain that the vitriol was coming out of the mouths of these counter-protesters. So that was an interesting development, not so much in the counter-protest, but the way that Stuff covered it. Today on the 21st, there is still absolutely no backing down from Jacinda Ardern, as I've mentioned, and the current news that came out this morning, after a blockade was put in place at 4 a.m. this morning, there was initial fear that this was to lock people in and begin a process whereby they were going to continue to remove cars, etc. It is not that. It is actually just a traffic management system. It does mean if you now leave the protest in your vehicle, you won't be able to get that vehicle back in, which in some ways I kind of see why they're doing that. It's a de-escalation tactic. I understand. And supplies are still going to be able to get to the protesters in terms of Portaloo, servicing, food, etc. That's been continuing to come in. So nothing really dramatic there. They've just created a one-way system. Another headline that's come out though is that 5 police that have been working at the protest have tested positive for COVID. No word around at all whether all of the other police regarded as close contacts and will need to isolate. We'll just keep an eye on it and see how we go. But interesting to see no massive outcry from that. Omicron numbers continue to skyrocket. We're getting thousands of cases a day, as was expected to be, with no real increase in hospitalisations or serious illness at this point. So we'll see how things evolve. The next week or so is going to be critical. Thanks once again, everyone, for tuning in. As I say, appreciate all the love to this point. We will keep an eye on things in Wellington and elsewhere around the country. But for now, team, stay safe, stay free, and we'll see you again real soon.